Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, we have watched the first practice of Ohio State spring camp. We are now recording live from your car. There's nowhere inside. We tried to record inside, and they began vacuuming right in front of us. So we moved. Then they brought the vacuum to us again. And so help me, Tom, if there comes a vacuum into this car, that's it. That's the end of the podcast forever.
I've never seen anyone do actual spike cleaning before, but that was clearly what that is. I feel a little bit targeted by the gentleman with the vacuum cleaner. I mean, the lobby was pretty clean already. Like, if you... The trophy lobby at the Woody Hayes is probably cleaner than my house, but they don't have a dog there, so I guess that's probably part of the why too.
There's like 3 carpets there. And, of course, they're going to clean them when we're there, obviously working, trying to provide for you people. And when I say you people, I mean that in a good way this time. So just so you guys are aware, we are now running ads on the show. So if you got those, that's what that's about. It's nothing you've done wrong. So this isn't a personal attack on you. It's just for the betterment of mankind.
This is very much our Krusty the Clown. I heartily endorse this event or product.
So, yeah, the first practice is in the books. Our first chance to look at Justin Fields, Matthew Baldwin, and Chris Chuganoff, and Daniel Vinatsky.
Yes.
Number 10, the walk-on, fourth string quarterback. My initial impressions, and just so you guys know, we got to see an hour of it. And the first 15 minutes is stretching and jogging. And then they break into some drills, some position drills. And then they throw the ball around a little bit between the receivers and the quarterback. So you don't really ever get to see much scrimmage action or any scrimmage action. But from the drills that I saw today, I thought Matthew Baldwin struggled early. Justin Fields did a little bit better. Chugs, for me, was the best quarterback of the 3. I assume that's going to be the way it is all the way through September and all the way through January and the college football playoffs. And Ryan Day said after practice that there is expected to be some struggles early on while you get timing and all of that together. But for me, I thought Day was happy with the start. I mean, not a lot you can make from just one day in terms of like who's leading and who's looking good, but
Yep.
Exactly. It's like the linebackers last week. No pads one day. This is what happened. Baldwin didn't look great, but it's just one practice and 1 hour of one practice.
It is the first hour of the first practice of spring football. And when you think back to past spring games, a lot of times the offense is going to look real ragged in those spring games. And I think it's important to keep in context, looking that ragged, that's 14 more practices from now. That's not even, they're not even there to the point where they're going to look as ragged as they sometimes do during spring games. So I would not necessarily go out and buy your Chris Chuganoff jersey yet. If you want to, that's fine, but don't necessarily do it with the goal of having the jersey of the starting quarterback for 2019.
And it's unfortunate that they force down your throat 2 jerseys, I think, that are licensed. Every year it's number 1, and then it's the year. And
how coincidental that this year the starting quarterback is very likely going to be wearing number 1.
Which is a bunch of crap. So, it's all political with that. Sure, Chris Olave at 19 is good. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he'll be fine. But if I want to go, why can't I buy a number 4 jersey? And why can't I put CHUGZ on the back of it? And why can't he garner some of that monetary expenditures other than NCAA rules?
I mean, other than that, There's no reason whatsoever.
Thank you. So, one practice in, the reason I'm saying Matthew Baldwin didn't look great, he was pretty erratic with the throws. Watching some one-on-ones, he got better. Justin Fields had some good throws with the one-on-ones. But again, they're not really, it's cursory watching that we get to do. And then the running backs, It was interesting that DeMario McCall, who did not practice today, he's being held out a little bit, but expected to be fine for after spring break, which they practice today on Wednesday. They practice on Friday. Then they're gone on spring break, where the players will go do safe things, good Christian things for their spring break, and then they'll come back. And Day expects a lot of the guys that were banged up today to be back, and I think McCall was one of those players. And of course, as a record on the Wednesday at noon, the Columbus Sirens are going. If you pick that up, that's what that is. That's not anything to worry about. So DeMario is now at running back. I talked to KJ Hill after practice, was asking him about the depth chart at H-back, and he said that DeMario is at running back. And I think there will still be packages, but that's something of note that we got from today, where they are looking for somebody behind J.K. Dobbins. Ryan Day said J.K. is going to be the workhorse. He's going to get a lot of carries, and they have to find somebody behind him. DeMario could be that guy.
It sure sounds like they are going to give DeMario a pretty good look as that number 2 guy. I talked to J.K. Dobbins after practice, and it's always interesting to hear the contrast between how things are discussed while they're in the moment and how things get discussed retroactively. And last year, J.K. Dobbins was always very careful with his choice of words, and he's glad to be sharing reps with Mike Weber, and he's a team player, and as long as the team wins, that's all he cares about. Now that Mike Weber has been safely ensconced in the NFL draft process, Dobbins talked a little bit on Wednesday about, that was the first time I'd ever actually done you are the running back for one drive, and then then the other guy's the running back for one drive, kind of switch on, switch off thing. And, he said that maybe took a little time to get used to, not being kind of in the flow of the game and all of that. So that'll be interesting to see. He certainly wants to be the guy this year. You can tell he's not real interested in, if they propose, hey, what if we do the one drive on, one drive off thing with DeMario McCall? That does not sound like something J.K. Dobbins would be particularly interested in doing this year.
And it was interesting. Day said after practice, and talking about J.K. Dobbins, that J.K. a lot of times last year was looking for the home run because he was only getting a certain number of carries, so he was trying to do basically too much with those attempts. And he's talked to him this year about, you're going to have plenty of opportunities. Don't try to force anything. Just turn that 5-yard carry into an 8-yard carry. That's all they need. And you look at last year, there were no home runs from J.K. compared to what we saw from him in 2017. So this might be obviously more opportunities leads to bigger home runs, but a new mentality will help there as well. And Ryan Day's already working on that with him.
Yeah, and Dobbins was asked, okay, if you're going to be the every down back, do you need to pace yourself? And he said, no, I'm just going to go. I'll make sure I'm in shape to be able to do it. And if they need me to carry it 30 times every week, I will carry it 30 times every week. So, we'll see how he feels about that after he's carried it 30 times, 12 weeks in a row. And, at that point, that may not look as appealing as it does right now, but I am quite certain that is not their goal. They do not plan to have J.K. Dobbins get 300 carries this year. 200 or 225 maybe, but 300 would be a lot for even if they play a 14-game calendar or season this year.
But you know what? This is probably his last year, so you may as well run him into the ground.
That's the Alabama model.
Exactly. Get what you can out of him, then toss him away and bring in the next guy. So Master Teague is a little banged up right now as well. Caroline told me he was on the stationary bike today. And again, these are all guys who are expected to be back just fine on when we get back from spring break. Tom, where are you going for spring break?
I'm going to lovely Central Ohio. I hear it's very nice this time of year.
That's a lie.
It's
I believe it is 13 degrees out right now.
Yeah, that's warmer than it has been the last couple days. So we're trending in the right direction.
In a week, it'll be in the 50s or 40s, so that's pretty good. We talked about H-back. KJ Hill said after the Rose Bowl today, he thought he was gone after the Rose Bowl. He was gone.
That makes 2 of us.
It makes 3 of us. So he was kind of surprised himself that he came back, and obviously, there's a bunch more opportunities for him to catch the ball, to lead the offense. The guy at H-back, and you mentioned earlier, we were talking earlier, C.J. Saunders was with the ones at times, he's with the twos at times. They don't need a lot of reps for KJ. The 2,000 rep club has returned, even though Urban Meyer is gone. So KJ's going to be doing a lot of watching and coaching. The one guy who really impressed me today was Jalen Gill. In the one-on-ones, nobody could stay with him. And when I say nobody, most of the time it was Isaiah Pryor, which probably isn't fair to Isaiah Pryor because, to put a safety on a guy like Jalen Gill who's fast and quick. But, he was learning the routes last year from the way from as open as he was getting today. It sure seemed like the routes were connecting. His route running was there. He was blowing by guys, had a nice one-handed catch on the sideline. And if they are moving, if DeMario McCall is at running back now, Jalen Gill is why.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good guess as to why that's happening, because they have. Yeah, I don't want to mislead anyone. We have an extremely good idea about what's going on everywhere in the program after 45 minutes of actual practice and 15 minutes of stretching. I think. I mean, do we want to actually carve the depth chart into stone right now? I think we're probably just about there.
Let's get the chisel in the slab.
Gill is someone that we have both talked about in the last couple weeks when we've been talking about guys we really want to see touch the ball somewhere, whether it's offense or special teams. Get him out in space, get him the ball. And that's based a lot on little tiny bits of maybe practice we saw last year, but a lot on, hey, he looks pretty good in high school, and people talk about the fact in practice on Wednesday, you started to see what people had been talking about. You saw that kind of taking the next step from what you saw in high school to now, because he played in a couple games last year, but not much, and maybe had a catch or two, maybe
one catch.
So you didn't have a whole lot to go on other than potential, promise, looks good, people are talking him up. You got that first kind of glimpse on Wednesday, and you saw what you would have wanted to see. Don't necessarily book him a trip to the Heisman Trophy ceremony just yet, at least for this year.
Jugs.
But I mean, it's all political. They're not going to take multiple players in the same team. But you saw, I think, what you would want to see out of a redshirt freshman for the first practice of the spring. He just keep him on your list of people to watch during the spring and during the spring game, and then potentially going into fall. He seems like someone who is probably ready to contribute in some way.
Or for the angry Ohio State fans who get annoyed at players blowing up or being blown up by the media in the spring, keep an eye on Jalen Gill. And then if he only has 7 catches this season, remember where to send those angry letters and all of those terrible, terrible words. But I all I can tell you is what I saw. He had a tremendous one-handed catch. He blew by, like Isaiah Pryor, on not even a double move deep. Fields just overthrew him. It was right on the tip of his fingers. I'm going to blame the quarterback on that one. But C.J. Saunders is also going to play a lot. As we've said before, every time you talk to Brian Hartline, if you don't talk about C.J. Saunders, he's going to put you in the figure 4 and be mad at you, So C.J. Saunders is going to play. That's 3 guys there. That's about what they played last year. The third guy getting reps behind Paris Campbell and KJ Hill, there's not going to be a lot. So really 2.5, and I think they've got that. KJ Hill said he's not going to play every snap. He still needs breathers, and every receiver will. The other receivers, the X's and the Z's, didn't really. I mean, I saw Garrett Wilson drop a couple today. Ryan Day said he's very smooth and looks like you want him to look. I'm not going to say Ryan Day knows more about his receivers than I do.
Or football in general.
But obviously, he's going to be fine. I saw Elijah Gardner had a couple of good moments, which is the first that we've seen of that in a while. Austin Mack had some moments, but I didn't really see much else as we're running around trying to gather as much info as possible.
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, we got to see bits of kind of individual drills, which you can kind of glean a little bit from that, and I can tell you, yeah, this guy dropped one pass on one individual drill, which the newsworthiness of that particular nugget of information is probably not tremendous, but
it's like a drip of water in the desert.
Yeah,
but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, but it's. I think you saw. You just sort of start to get a little bit of a sense, and we'll probably have a little bit more sense Friday. We get to watch again for an hour on Friday. At that point, it's not a trend, but it's at least a line. Right now we have one data point. If you have another one on Friday, you can start to draw a little bit of a line that, hey, so-and-so dropped some passes on Wednesday. We didn't see that on Friday. It was probably first day nerves. Or if the same person is making the same mistakes or the same, having the same physical issues or whatever, then okay, maybe it's something that warrants keeping an eye on more in the future. It's still, this feels like something that warrants repeating. It's still very early. It is still 1 hour into spring football that we have seen. They practiced another 45 minutes or an hour after we finished, but that was about all we got, and we'll have a little more on Friday. But there were a couple times that I thought, oh, that's really interesting. C.J. Saunders is out there running through drills with, Austin Mack is on one side of him and Chris Olave is on the other. Does that mean that has he somehow jumped KJ Hill? Like, no, because the next time he's running through the same drill, he's got Elijah Gardner on one side of him, and so we are kind of trying to piece certain amounts of information together. The one thing that I thought you could get a pretty good sense for was the offensive line. Yeah,
and we are still missing Jonah Jackson, and Ryan Day said after practice that he'll give them depth this year, and that's code for hopefully he starts. But Thayer Munford, as you guys probably know now, is out with left tackle, is out with a back thing. He missed the Rose Bowl with a back thing. And as an athlete, if you've got a situation with your back, that's more concerning to me than a knee or an elbow or anything like that, because it can come and go, and sometimes it's hard to take care of or to get rid of, and it's one of those things that can linger, and it's one of those things that can become part of like what you're known for, who you are, because it never goes away. Now they may just be this might be precaution. He was walking around practice all day today. Wasn't walking around like it was super easy for him. I wouldn't say lollygagging. It was more of a curmudgeon-y, ramble stuff. I don't know the right words, but it looked like he's not entirely comfortable right now.
No, it was not a purposeful stride. It was a kind of deliberate stroll, maybe. If we're really,
we're looking.
Welcome to the first day of spring football. This is what we're.
How are people walking through adverbs?
He was not walking quickly. He was not one of the guys who was like we saw Jordan Fuller pulling a weight on a sled, which is something we saw like last year. I remember Antoine Jackson doing that. He was out, but he was doing that. Munford was just walking. And so that's not a great sign. The fact that this has lingered for a month or so is not, we don't know if it's gotten any better. We don't know if it's gotten any worse. We don't know if if they're looking at surgical something. We don't know exactly what the issue is. We just know it's something with the back. Backs are not great. If you've ever had your back go out, that's pretty debilitating. So, we don't know if this is a nerve or a disc or muscle or what, but that has to be a little bit of a concern. And the fact that they had Brandon Bowen at tackle on Wednesday, which you and I think, had both at least thought that it was possible that you would see him start at guard.
Right. Yeah.
So for him to be at tackle, that tells me there's at least some concern that this could linger into the year, and then you'd want to have a veteran returning starter left tackle this fall. That if he's out there at the start of spring ball, that's at least got to be part of their thinking coming into the spring.
Let me run this by you. Okay, here was the number one offensive line today. It was Josh Allaby at left tackle, Gavin Cupp at left guard, Josh Myers at center, Wyatt Davis at right guard, Brandon Bowen at right tackle. Who is missing from that group is a guy we were thinking has a possibility to start, and that's Nicholas Petit-Frere, who is the number 2 right tackle. Keeping him at right tackle tells me that the only job opening is at right tackle for him. And so they don't want to move him to, like Allaby has moved to left tackle for spring, for right now, whereas I think they want Petit-Frere to just focus on right tackle because we would like you to win this job or at least continue to get better at this position. And if Brandon Bowen has to slide inside, or maybe this is going to be a battle between Petit-Frere and Brandon Bowen at right tackle, and they don't want to move Petit-Frere anywhere other than the job he is competing for. Allaby can go where, he's a fifth-year senior. He can go wherever. So maybe this comes down to Petit-Frere and Bowen, and if Jonah Jackson is good enough, we expect to start, say, at left guard. Now Brandon Bowen is definitely an option at tackle, and now you've got that fifth-year senior competing against a sophomore, and I think that's going to be those two, at right tackle. It's going to be, surprisingly, a pretty interesting watch this spring.
It is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, I think we came in anticipating that right tackle job was going to be Josh Allaby, Nicholas Petit-Frere, fifth year versus sophomore battle, and instead, I guess he's a redshirt freshman, and instead you've got a different fifth year senior on that side of the line. Allaby was the one who started left tackle for the Rose Bowl when Munford was out, and he backed up Jamarco Jones at left tackle the year before that. So he's been on that left side of the line. And we saw last year Isaiah Prince had trouble moving right tackle to left tackle, and so they just kept him at right tackle last year and had Munford play left. So I would assume that Allaby, I would not necessarily assume that means that Allaby can't play right tackle. I think that probably is, they view that there's potentially more of a need at left tackle, but if he has a preference or has an experience advantage at one of those spots, it would be left tackle. So it makes sense there. And then Bowen was a right guard a couple of years ago, so you're doing things kind of in the same direction on that same side of the line. So it kind of makes sense to have him over there as well.
And then the second offensive line was Max Ray at left tackle, Kevin Woidke, who is still on scholarship, at left guard, Matthew Jones, redshirt freshman, at center. Ryan Jacoby, the true freshman, was at right guard. And then, as we said, Nicholas Petit-Frere is at tackle. When I talked to Jacoby this spring, he said he had only been talked to about as playing tackle, but obviously would play wherever. And so now you see him at guard. The Woidke thing is somewhat interesting. After practice, Ryan Day, I'm not sure if you were there yet, was asked about scholarship numbers. They're 2 over, but Ryan really didn't want to talk about it, or I forget how he answered the question, other than it'll be fine once fall comes down,
which is factually correct. It will be fun. They will not. My solemn pledge to you: they will not be at 86 when the Florida Atlantic game kicks off. It sounded like Woidke's on scholarship for the spring, and they've done things like that. They have done that before, and if they end up at 84 this summer and they can keep him on scholarship, maybe great. But if they need the scholarship, then he got a quarter of scholarship. Sorry, I'm dating myself. They're on semesters now and have been for like 15 years. He gets a semester of scholarship money and then is, goes back to being a walk-on after that. Then that's if that's how it is, then he's one semester ahead of the game anyway. So I'm sure he won't complain about that. But yeah, they're at 87 right now. The offensive line grad transfer possibilities seem like they've kind of sorted themselves all out. Potentially, maybe they're going to take a grad transfer quarterback this spring, or summer. That's a possibility, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be 88, 89, 90, on July 1st, probably. You always will have a couple transfers after spring ball. That's just inevitable. And so I think the scholarship numbers, yes, they're over right now, but they don't have to actually be at 85 until August 1st or whenever fall practice starts. So that's probably not something you need to worry about too much right now.
Defensively, we finally got our first look at Brendan White and Jocelyn Went at linebacker, as they've gone to this hybrid look that isn't going to be the only look. They will have like normal sized linebackers. Brendan White won't always be in there. Sometimes it'll be like, we just compare it to like how Ohio State used to do it, or how Michigan has done it in the recent past, since we're talking about kind of adopting Michigan's defense. When their starting base defense would be with Khaleke Hudson, who was the safety hybrid. So Brendan White would be with the ones. And then sometimes they'd bring in a bigger linebacker, Noah Furbush, at Sam and take Hudson out. Who that bigger linebacker is for the Buckeyes, we don't know, because there's so many guys now that they have to cram into a smaller room, basically, all of these other guys. And the ones today were Tuff Borland, Brendan White, and for me, sometimes I would see Pete Werner, other times I would see Malik Harrison. Mm-hmm. But it was really those four. And then sometimes Baron Browning in the middle instead of Borland. But those guys, Taraja Mitchell was with the threes, as was like Kayvon Pope. Dallas Gant was at times with the twos. Mm-hmm. So he's maybe making some moves, but I know people are... not everybody is sold on Tuff Borland and Pete Werner, but they were still right there at the head of the class with a new defense that Ryan Day said he wants to be simpler. Because when I asked him, I'm like, why you as an offensive guy did you want to bring this defense in? And he's like, I see all of the speed we have on defense, and I want to get that speed on the field, because it forces offenses to throw the ball underneath more and just fight harder to get down the field. And he wants that kind of defense, but also simpler, so that, it'll attack, but it'll be simple for the defense, for the defenders, so that they're not thinking too much or getting confused. So that's what he wants from this defense. I think there's going to be so many compartments to this defense, so many like personnel groupings, that guys can become specialized. And that's one of the things that Greg Schiano talked about before this season. And I think at the time we talked about how that's also what Bill Belichick does, where you bring in free agents that nobody else wants, and you want them for this one specific thing, and they're really good at it, and you get the most out of them doing this one specific thing. Here, I don't know why it didn't work before. If you're asking somebody to do this, you should be able to simplify what you're asking if it's only a few things. The problem that we saw last year is asking Pete Werner to do so many things, asking Isaiah Pryor to do so many things. And if you miss one of those things by just an inch, that guy is gone. So this year, I think simpler is always better until you get to the point where it's then too simple. And we haven't gotten to that point. Simpler is better than what they were doing last year, and that's what Ryan Day is going to do now. Simplifying
can only help guys play faster. And that sounds like that is kind of the watchword for the spring is fast, speed, simple, quick. I mean, that seems like that is kind of the overarching view for what he wants from the defense. And since he's the head coach, that's what he's going to get from the defense. So you do get to a point where you can be too simple, but it doesn't seem like that's something they're in real danger of falling into at this point. And frankly, if they did fall into too simple, how much worse could it be than last year's extremely complicated and we'll show you? Because
even if you're simple, you still have more skill than the opponent.
Right. Just a pure man-to-man thing. They have more talent than at least 10 teams they're going to play in the regular season next year. Just across the deck, not even a question. Even the opposing team's fan base is not going to contest that Ohio State has better players across the field than their team does. So you can get away with a relatively simplified scheme. If they can play fast, then great. It sounds like they don't quite know what the finished product is going to look like. They have at this point, I think, broad strokes on what they want and what they want it to look like. But it sure sounded like they're going to get the guys out there, see how individual guys do in certain positions and in certain packages, and then adjust from there. And that may mean a personnel adjustment. That may mean a scheme adjustment. This is going to be a work in progress for a little while. Ryan Day basically said, someone asked him about the scheme, and he said, well, we wanted to play 4 down. I think we got a question about this last week. Like, they knew they were going to play 4 defensive linemen. Beyond that, yeah, we'll see. I think they have broad strokes ideas on what they want to do, but behind those 4 defensive linemen, it could look like a whole lot of different ways before the start of September.
Yeah, these are all new coaches learning from learning who they have and what they can do. So it's a lot of trial and error, and they should probably just rename spring football to trial and error, because that's what it is. You throw a bunch of stuff at them and see what sticks, but you're like today was installing things and very basics, building blocks of putting everything together. Defensive line wise, Jayshon Cornell is back at defensive tackle, back at the 3 technique after being at defensive end last year for need. Now there's so many defensive ends without him. When you've got Zach Harrison running with the 4s, you've got a pretty good number of defensive ends, in my opinion. So you've got Chase Young and Jonathan Cooper with the 1s, Tyler Friday and Tyreek Smith with the 2s, Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Noah Potter with the 3s, yep. and sometimes it would be Zach Harrison with the 3s. But the thing, when I'm looking at Zach Harrison, and he's listed right now at 6'6", 255, he looks like a giant spider.
Explain.
The most terrifying, 4-legged spider. He's just long, and he's got this reach. He's just intriguing to watch run, and watching some of the defensive line drills when they have to drill underneath like that, and the trampoline looking thing, and he has to bend all the way down, and he's still able to get low despite being so tall and long, and he's got the long arms, and he's poor big guy is cramped under there. But Jonathan Cooper was asked about him. He's like, man, he's fast, and we know that about him. Ryan Day said he's taken to the winter workouts and has grown. We all want to talk about him. I still think you can't put too much on him this season, especially when you consider the depth. And Javonte Jean-Baptiste is another guy who last year when we saw him, and I said to somebody yesterday, last year he looked more like Benjamin Victor than Chase Young. Mm-hmm. Now he looks more like Chase Young, and he's put on 30 pounds from where he was listed at last year. Now he's 6'5", 245. He still looks thin-ish, mm-hmm. but now he can play and still hold up. So those 2 guys we're talking about 2 guys on the 3rd and 4th team of the defensive ends, and there's reason to be excited about those guys. So it's just a really deep group.
It's a really deep group, and with these guys, and going back to the linebackers, when you said who was running with the first team linebackers, I could just sense in my head people throwing their phones against stuff. Why are you doing the same stuff you did last year? And this goes back to, this is the first hour of the first practice of spring football. If anything, they're going to default to what they had last year, because this is with the defensive coaches, other than Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson probably has a better sense for what he has than Al Washington or Jeff Hafley or Matt Barnes, any of the other guys. They are going to probably default a little bit to what was done last year because they don't have all the information that the coaches last year had. And you will probably see changes in who is running with the ones at some point this spring. You will see more changes over the summer. You will see changes probably during the course of the year. Brendan White did not start last season at safety and as the number one safety. Like, these things are going to change throughout the spring.
Michael Jordan was at left guard.
Yep. Yeah, these things are going to change throughout the spring. They're going to change throughout the summer. They're going to change during the season. So don't assume that this is some kind of a sign that something major is, that everything is going to be the same as it was last year. This is one data point that is interesting mostly because this tells you where things started. And then when you start seeing things change, that's when I think you start reading something into, this guy is no longer with the ones, or this guy is now with the ones, or this guy is still with the ones when other things are changing. That's when you can kind of start reading more into depth charts. This is just kind of a good data point. This is like our control group for our experiment as we try and figure out what's going to happen this fall.
Did you get much of a look at the safeties? From what I saw, Isaiah Pryor was with the ones. That was expected just because, Jordan Fuller is out. He would be in there somewhere.
Yes.
I think I saw Proctor with the twos. I saw Amir Reap with the twos as well.
Yeah, I think Proctor was with the twos and Amir Reap was with the twos. I think that's...
Who was the other safety then? We were stumped. Me too. Like we said, I don't even know if we got to see two safeties on the field. I probably have some footage on my phone.
I'm thinking back to like individual drills and the order they went through individual drills in, and I'm not remembering because we know that Fuller's out all spring. Yeah. Ryan Day said a lower body injury for him. We know
really there's no other safeties other than Reap, Proctor, and
I did see. Pryor. I feel like I did see Sean Wade with the safeties a little bit.
Yeah,
Sean Wade was kind of a couple different spots.
Sean Wade's another guy that we need to talk about because, as you're mentioning, and as Ryan Day said, we don't really know where everybody's going to be on defense, what exactly it's going to look like, and he's another guy who, I've been told he'll be the number one nickel. And does that mean he's not going to be at corner? Is not going to be a safety? He was with the ones, and like in individual drills, it would be like Okudah, Arnett, and Wade, and it's like, well, obviously he's with the top group, but they don't really do nickel until like the third practice. They don't really install that stuff, so we don't really. If he's your number one nickel and you don't have nickel till the third practice, he's got to be somewhere. For me, and I've been saying this forever, he's got to be on the field. And I guess nickel is okay. I mean, you're going to be doing that 60% of the time,
probably.
Cornerback rotation, we'll see. Somebody's going to have to. They're not just going to rotate to rotate. Somebody's going to have to step up there. I didn't really see anything from Banks or Tyreek Johnson or Marcus Williamson today to think that that's going to happen. And again, first hour.
And it was Okudah and Damon Arnett were the starting corners, running with the ones at corner. Marcus Williamson, who probably, he certainly has the experience edge over the other guys who were true freshmen last year. He was hurt a lot of last year. He was in orange limited contact jersey again today. Marcus Hooker was another guy who was in an orange jersey today. So I might have seen Marcus Hooker with the safeties at one point.
He was.
So he may have been one of the other people that was kind of in the mix there. So this is again, and this is a lot of this stuff is not stuff that we got around to asking Ryan Day during the first press conference about the third team safeties and the order and the rotation and all that. And so we didn't get an answer on that because we didn't ask it. And you can kind of look at who was running in which order and try and glean something out of that, but you're doing it without Jordan Fuller, and so there's still a lot of unanswered questions at a lot of spots.
And I go back to every spring the safety position seems to fluctuate. And, you go back to, 2014, 15, 16. I don't even remember when Damon Webb was a corner for the first 3 practices and then moves to safety. And, it would have been 2016, and then is starting side by side with Malik Hooker, because to open spring, it was just Malik Hooker and Eric Glover-Williams as the number 1 safeties. So they pulled Webb over there, and within a practice, he's with the ones at safety. So things will happen this week, next week. Well, maybe not next. Well, not next week. Week after that, where there's just, we need this guy here, so we're going to take him. This guy would fit better here because he's being wasted here. And there's a lot of, it's like a hot stove league while, like you're trading guys to better situations. And really the goal is to put everybody in the best situation to help the team. And sometimes you got to play a position where, like Sean Wade last year, got to play everywhere pretty much except for cornerback, which is where he wants to play, but will play wherever he is asked. The rest of the defense, defensive tackles, I don't think we touched on that. There's, as I said, Jayshon Cornell's at tackle. I saw Haskell Garrett running with the ones, Jayshon Cornell running with the ones. Both of those guys, 3 techs. And obviously Robert Landers and Davon Hamilton at nose tackle. I saw Tommy Togiai and Antoine Jackson together at one point, and Tommy Togiai had to scoot Antoine Jackson over to either be able to fit on the defensive line or put him where he belonged. I think everybody wants to see something from Antoine Jackson this spring. This is a big spring for him. There's a lot of guys on that defensive line, and he's a 4th-year junior?
That sounds right.
So things have to happen now for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who are kind of in that boat. I mean, there's the 5th-year seniors, the Josh Alabys and the Brandon Bowens, and those guys who are, this is literally your last chance to win a starting job. For an Antoine Jackson, he's in that kind of next group where it's the younger guys who still have maybe a year or 2 left, but if you're not able to win a starting job now, or at least get pretty high up in that rotation where you're getting regular time now, you're going to get passed up by the younger guys. Because one thing that Ohio State football does, they keep recruiting good football players. So it does not typically get easier to get on the field as, just because the guys ahead of you leave does not mean that you're not going to get passed by the next guys. So this is kind of the opportunity for, on the defensive line. Antoine Jackson's a good example. You want to talk about tight ends like Jake Hausman, this is your chance to get on the field, because if you're getting passed up by Jeremy Ruckert and you're not getting ahead of Luke Farrell, you're not getting ahead of Rashad Berry, who is, by the way, staying at tight end. Our Instagram sleuthing has failed.
At least for today.
At least for today. Yes, at least for today. It's still early, but but nothing has changed there. So Rashad Berry's still at the tight ends. But that's the kind of guys that you have an opportunity, but you are running out of time to get a chance to make kind of a long-term meaningful impact on the field here.
So based on this 1 hour, this one glorious hour of practice that we saw,
national champions.
No, I'm going to ask for a projection or a definitive declarative statement about one player or thing that you saw today that, even just this little glimpse, you are sure that was fact and true and will bear fruit and bear out this season. What would it be?
After repeatedly saying not to read too much into the first.
Exactly. That's why I want you to read as much as possible into something, into one particular thing, and throw it out there into the world. What is it?
I think that Austin Mack is finally going to take the next step this year. He looked, and again, this is me basing this on, I happened to be watching 3 or 4 reps where Austin Mack did something good. Now, I remember watching either this practice or one of the practices right around now last year and saying, Jalen Harris is, and then he had 2 catches last year. So
Mack will have more than 2, though.
This is my solemn pledge to you. Austin Mack will have more than 2 catches this year unless he gets hurt. So with the understanding that this is an inherently unfair question that puts me in a terrible spot,
Yes.
and all of that,
You're welcome.
this is the year Austin Mack takes the leap and turns into a significant, I don't know, 700-yard receiver, 600-yard receiver, something like that.
All right.
How about you? No. You have to do it too. You have to do it too.
Well, it's funny that you went with receiver based on like watching them for like 3 passes or whatever, because that's why I'm going with Jalen Gill. I just the depth chart is more favorable than it would be with Demario McCall there. So, based on what I saw, he looks like one of the most dynamic players. We didn't see a lot from Chris Olave, so I'm thinking he might be a bust. But I'm only going to do one definite thing. So Jalen Gill's my pick was everything you were hoping he would be. So that's mine. What about you, listeners?
What did you think?
What did you think? So anything else from today that we need to cover or speculate on?
I think we've probably squeezed about as much juice as we can out of this particular open practice window, but
the show is almost as long as the practice we get to watch.
We will have another opportunity to watch practice on Friday. That's where it starts getting a little more interesting because they're doing a little bit more, but also you can start contrasting what's happening then with what happened the first day, and then when they get back from spring break, whenever the next time we get to watch practices, that's when you're probably not going to see personnel changes after one practice. I would be pretty surprised because I didn't see anything like super glaring that would have
that
really
almost seems like a panic move.
Right. They're not going to do that. But if practice 4, practice 6, something like that, if we're watching one of those, that's when you probably are going to start to see someone else is repping with the ones, or someone has moved from corner to safety, or from running back to H, or whatever it is.
And I went ahead and posted the spring practice schedule on the front page of the Ozone this morning, Wednesday morning. So you can check it out there, let you know what to expect from who we're talking to when. So that will do it for today. We will be back with you, I don't know, probably next week again, and go over everything else we've seen, preview spring break, see how everybody's doing on their awesome spring break. So thanks for listening, and please continue to rate and review the show, and we appreciate that at all times, and have a good week.